I have a list of questions, and this is going to be real loose and extemporaneous, so bear with me, but I'm going to go through these questions in order, and I'm going to let Don fill in the blanks. Don Halverson, where were you? Were you drafted, or did you volunteer?
I was drafted.
He was drafted. In what time were you drafted?
Well, I got out of Roosevelt High School in January '42, and I landed in Italy in '43. I was drafted about 8 months after.
8 months out of high school and boots on the ground in Italy. Were you in the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps?
I was in the Army, 34th Red Bull Division in Italy.
Where did you train in the United States?
Camp Landing, Florida.
How
Spent
long?
about 5 months there.
5 months at Camp Landing in Florida, and
And a couple weeks up at Camp Robinson near Little Rock.
what was your military occupational specialty?
Light weapons,
Light weapons, infantry?
machine gun and motors.
That sounds like medium weapons to me, machine guns and mortars.
Yeah.
Light weapons are like rifles.
Well, this is the small motors.
Where were you stationed before you went overseas?
Well, I wasn't stationed anywhere. We just got to the East Coast and got our shots and put us on a boat, and away we went.
You already anticipated the second question. I asked how you got overseas, and I guess you went by boat. Were you an individual replacement, or did you go with an entire unit?
No, just as a replacement.
When did you know you were going to serve with a unit in combat?
Well, I landed in Italy in October of 13th, and then we hiked over, and I ended up with the 34th Division.
October 13th of 1943?
Yep.
That was a yes, in case you didn't get that. Where was the 34th Infantry Division? I understand they came from North Africa because they were the first division deployed by the United States in World War II, and they came from North Africa. So where were you when you joined them?
Naples, Italy.
You joined them in Naples. What was your first assignment?
I was just a machine gun squad.
You were a machine gun squad, and what was your position in that squad?
I was a gunner.
A gunner. So you had somebody else carrying ammo for you?
Yeah.
That was a yes.
6 men in each squad. One carried the tripod, one carried the barrel, and the rest carried the ammunition. So we had 3 machine gun squads and 3 motor squads.
Did you stay with the same unit for your entire tour?
That's right. Next 2 years.
2 years with the same guys. How was that?
Not the same guys.
Oh, not
Kept
the same,
rotating.
Not the same guys, and why was that?
A lot of them get killed and wounded.
Yeah. How did the rotation work from the front lines to rest areas?
You know, we just got relieved and hiked back for a few days rest, and that's about it.
When did you go when you were taken out of the front lines to the rest areas?
You know, just a few miles back off the line.
Okay.
Back about where the artillery was.
That's a dig, because I was in a 105 howitzer battery in Vietnam.
That was our rest area.
We didn't have any front lines. The wire was the front line in our unit. But anyway. What can you tell us what major campaigns or battles you were involved in?
Well, the first one was 3 crossings of Volturno River, and we had Mount Pantano, and that was a bad one. From there it was to Casino in the monastery, where we lost half the company there, mostly my platoon. And it was up to Anzio for 4 months. I went up through Rome and on up to the Leaning Tower of Pisa and the North Apennines. and the Swiss border, and that was the end of the war.
I hope
May
you-
2nd of 45, that was the best day of my life.
He's already anticipating my questions. The end of the war for him was May 2nd, 1945. I hope you picked up on all those different campaigns he was involved in, the North Apennines, Monte Cassino. For those of you not familiar with World War II, D-Day in Normandy gets a lot of press. And certainly it was a major campaign for the Allies. But Italy was designed to keep some German divisions from going to France to prevent the beachhead at Normandy from taking place. And they fought long and hard in order to accomplish that. What was your worst day in combat?
I would say Casino, when we lost most of my men.
What percentage of your men did you lose at Monte Cassino?
Well, it was half the company. 35 of my guys were gone.
Were you wounded?
Nope,
How close
they
did you?
kept missing me.
How close did you come to being wounded?
Well, they had him hole through my canteen and cut up my bedroll and cut my shoes on my leather on my shoes.
What was the best day you had in combat?
I have to say, May 2nd of 45 when the war ended.
And what did you do at that time?
Well, they let us go up into Switzerland for a few days. That was nice. Hiked around Zurich and took a little boat ride down Lake Luzerne and just saw the sights and had some good beer.
Tell me what you told me about the lake that you saw while you were leaving the lines and what you did when you got to that lake.
And what?
The lake that you went to?
Oh, Lake Luzerne?
I'm going to have to prompt them on this story because it's pretty unbelievable. But so you were brought out of the lines, you saw a lake, and you were still wearing your long johns from the winter
that.
campaign, right?
When that was
So tell me what happened.
that was when I was up on the Swiss border when the war ended.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all looked up and the war was ended. We looked down, nice lake, and we all jumped in after wearing our long johns for about 3 months and killed every fish in the pond probably.
What Don's not willing to share with you, but I will, is that when they took the long johns off, the hair had grown in between the fibers of the long johns. I was complaining to Don about being in Vietnam and going 3 weeks without a shower. He told me he went for 3 months.
Well, we had 2 showers there. November was a rainy month, so we had a shower in November of 43 and we got one in November of 44. Army Bleen made us nice and clean.
1 shower a year, whether you needed it or not, right? I think you already told us where you were when the war ended. You also told me a story about kind of an interesting turn of events when the 34th Infantry Division, some German units surrendered to them. What unit was that?
It was the German 34th up in the Po Valley.
So the 34th Division of
card
the
there.
German Army surrendered to the 34th Infantry Division of the American Army. How many surrendered?
That card there I showed you that we got, I don't know how many there were. We didn't count them. They just gave up. And
Did they seem to be happy that the war was over?
well, some of those Germans, they were delighted when we took them prisoner. They liked our cigarettes.
How long did you continue to serve in Germany when the war ended?
About 5 months.
And
had a rape.
what determined who got to go home?
All went home, but we had to wait till they build the railroad so we get back down to Naples and home.
What did you do while you were waiting?
Well, like I say, went up in Switzerland, took a little ride down through Monte Carlo and Nice, France. Killed the time hiking around Austria and places. That was about it.
So a lot of us have this image of World War II veterans coming home and having big parades and welcome home celebrations. Tell me about your welcome home when you got back to Minneapolis.
Well, I pulled into Milwaukee Depot about 9 o'clock, and my dad, mother, and one of my sisters met me and went home, and that was it.
Mom and Dad and your sister, welcome home.
That's what I say, 60 years, and now I'm glad I lived this long, because now I got that 100 flight and a few other things.
We're glad you lived this long, too. Thank you very much, Don. Appreciate it, buddy. George Brose, or Brosey? Most of you probably don't know that the Army had hospital ships along with the Navy during World War II. And George served on one of the Army hospital ships. He was in the 821st Hospital Ship Platoon. And their job was to evacuate the wounded back to the United States. It's my understanding they evacuated Americans as well as German POWs. And I'm going to let George tell you about the rest of the story here. Where were you drafted, or did you volunteer, George?
I volunteered, but for the Marines, but they turned me down. So months later, I was drafted, and went through Fort Snelling.
Drafted and went through Fort Snelling. What were you doing prior to your being drafted in the Army?
Well, I was working on a farm, actually. I was kind of glad to get off the farm and into the Army then.
Glad to get off the farm and into the Army during World War II.
I had a month to go on my finished school, but I went in. I quit school early so I could go in the service. I was drafted under that first 18-year-old draft.
Where did you train?
Schick General Hospital in Clinton, Iowa. Hospital training.
And your military occupational specialty was what?
A jack of all trades, a medical technician. Mostly I worked with the, we had a platoon, the 821st platoon was two officers and 22 enlistment. That was it. That was our outfit.
And where were you stationed before you went overseas?
I wasn't stationed anywhere. I went in over pretty fast. I was still down in Clinton, Iowa. I enlisted in. I volunteered for the duty I was in, which was a good thing.
Did you take a ship overseas?
We took a hospital ship, the Acadia. I made, I don't know, I think 4 trips over and back.
4 trips over and back across the Atlantic. Were you an individual replacement, or did you go with an entire unit?
We went as a unit. We stayed together the whole war.
When did you know you were going to serve with your unit in combat?
Probably the first part of November 1943.
November of 1943. And your first assignment was what?
Our ship landed at the Algiers, North Africa, and from there we were assigned to a replacement center, and then they took us down to Casablanca, we picked up a load of wounded and brought it back to the United States on the General Mann, which was Navy transport.
So you worked on multiple different ships?
Yeah. I think it was about 7 or 8 different ships, yeah.
Did you stay with the same unit for your entire tour?
Entire trip, yeah.
How did the rotation from your duties in the combat areas work?
We were assigned, while we were overseas, we were assigned to different hospitals. Like in Italy, we were assigned to the 32nd Field Hospital and the 9th Evacuation Hospital. And waiting to get a load of wounded to take back. So we wound up in quite a few different outfits attached to them. When we went in invasion of Marseille, we were assigned duty with an artillery outfit. And from there we went back to Italy again.
So there's another little known landing of Allied forces in Marseille in southern France, along with the Italy and the more famous Normandy campaign. Can you tell us what major campaigns or battles you evacuated wounded from?
Just about all the way up and down, from England down to North Africa.
Okay. How many trips did you make it back and forth across the Atlantic?
4. Yeah.
Tell us what was your worst day?
I really didn't have any worse day, to tell you the truth. Just went along with the rest of them, that's all.
Just doing your job?
Yep.
How about a best day? Did you have a best day?
The best day? Probably when I got married.
Was that after the end of the war?
Well, we pulled into the Brooklyn Naval Yards there on one trip. I met my wife there. In fact, the reason I met her was somebody from a soldier from the 34th Division introduced me to her.
Don?
And he married her sister, and I married Helen, a little Italian girl.
How long after the war ended before you were sent home?
I think the war ended in what, October?
No, it ended May 2nd, 1945, or May 8th, 1945.
Yeah. Well, we had orders to go to the Pacific. And when they dropped a bomb, then they canceled out our orders.
Okay.
And I stayed in New York then when I went to school there.
Tell us about what your welcome home was like. Did they have big parades on
No.
Broadway?
No, nothing. No, absolutely nothing.
Thank you. Thank you, George. Appreciate it. Next, I have Gene Roberts, a U.S. Marine Corps Staff Sergeant who worked with the 3rd Marine Division Air Wing.
Thank you for your service.
Okay, Gene, I'm going to go through the same list of questions that I did with the other veterans. Where were you? Were you drafted or did you volunteer for the...
I'm a rare volunteer draftee.
Oh, explain that to me. Volunteer draftee, how does that work?
Well, it so happened that I was graduating from high school in 1943, and I wanted to get in the Marine Corps. In fact, I had tried 3 times prior to official graduation to get into the Marines, and I had one bad feature. I was too tall.
Too tall for the Marines.
So anyhow, April 1943 came along. My birthday is the 4th. And on the 5th, I couldn't get downtown quick enough to volunteer for the draft, which had an age limit of 18 years. You had to be 18 years. So I volunteered right there, and about 10 days later, I got my notice to come to the draft board for the physical. And that determined whether or not I was worth the Marine Corps.
And you made it that time.
I did indeed make it that time. And along with probably 15, 20 other guys. And that was one of the happiest days of my life.
What were you doing before you went into the Marine Corps?
Oh, do I have to tell you?
Yeah.
I was working at a grocery store and slinging root beer at an A&W root beer stand.
Where did you train, and for how long did that training last?
Well, I trained at various places because our equipment was transferable and the type of equipment that you easily can move. So I trained first of all in San Diego Marine Corps Base. And from San Diego Marine Corps Base, we moved up to in California, and I honestly can't remember the name of the base, but we were up there for learning how to shoot rifles and some other stuff. And that was about as far as I got stateside.
How did you get overseas?
Ship.
By ship. In the Marine Corps. Imagine that.
43.
Were you an individual replacement, or did you go with an entire unit?
No, I went over with the entire unit. Our unit was organized, and they had already the equipment was waiting on manpower, is what it was doing. And we, as soon as they got the manpower for that equipment, we had to go someplace where we could actually operate the equipment and know what we were doing. And it was an equipment designed for the first time in the history of the military, and that was radar.
Radar.
Yes.
Okay. So when did you know you were going to serve with a unit in combat?
From the beginning.
Okay. What was your first assignment overseas?
Our first assignment overseas? Our first assignment was to get our unit set up and operative so we could determine whether or not we were going to have visitors from the sky.
Okay. And where were you at that time?
Saipan.
Saipan. Did you stay with the same unit for your entire tour of duty?
Yes. I was not transferred out of that unit, and neither was any of the other men, even though they might have requested they stayed with that unit because of the information that they learned, for the most part, was considered confidential and secret, so consequently we had to remain secret and confidential.
Okay, my information is that you were a staff sergeant, that you were with the 3rd Marine Division. They call it an air wing now. I think it was an air group at that time.
Yeah, it was an air wing at that time, and that was my mistake in making contact.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it was an air wing. In fact, it so happened that it was the 3rd Marine Air Wing out of Cherry Point, North Carolina.
So what other campaigns besides Saipan were you involved in?
Well, Saipan was a long one, and Saipan was a tough one. Unfortunately, I didn't have to go any further. But it was a terrible, terrible fight.
Can you tell us about your worst day in World War II?
I can't tell you about a worse day, but I can sure as heck give you a bad night.
Do that, please.
All right. I had a foxhole dug in front of a tree. And the tree was probably that big around at the base where it went into the ground. And kind of tall. And one night I was getting ready to crawl in the underground. It was deep. It was probably as deep as this table is, maybe halfway down. So anyhow, I got in there, and all of a sudden I heard kerbang, shoo, whoa, right over my head. And I thought, what in the Lord is that? And I kept watching and watching and watching. Pretty soon I saw a flash from a tree right out there. Mango, another whoop, and into the tree it went, the slug. So I thought, my gosh, that sucker, he's climbing that tree on me. Well, what happens is that the Japanese produce very good snipers. And they're so good, in fact, that they have split-toed shoes. The big toe is by itself, and then you've got four like this. And they're made out of canvas, or they're made out of leather. And what they do is climb the tree. And this guy was smart. I mean, he really was. And what would happen is that he'd fire a shot at me, and I was watching that tree all the time, and it was pitch black outside. Just, you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. And that goes to an old joke I'm not going to reply on. Anyhow, that it was dark. I could barely make out what was on my rifle. So I kept watching that tree, and then be a shot come from over there. Oh, okay, yeah, from the tree. So then I lay back, and then I'd raise up again, and the shot would come from up there. Maybe it would come from down there or up there. The guy was moving around in that tree. Well, that's pretty odd, pretty doggone good high odds to fire against, because you don't know whether you're going to hit him or not. And where it's dark, that's hard to say. So anyhow, I decided I wasn't going to mess with him. So he fired and fired and fired and fired. None of them went right over my all of them went right over my foxhole into that tree. So the next morning I got up just a little after daybreak and looked in the tree, and I scanned that tree before I climbed out of my pit, and nobody in there. So I thought, well, it's safe. So I rolled out of my spot, which was the safest way to get out of a foxhole in those days, and got settled in another position. And I happened to look up just as I was walking by this tree, and down at the base of that tree, about that far off the ground, was a circle of bark about that big around that had been taken off the tree by the bullets embedded in the inside of that circle. And I thought, holy Toledo, am I ever lucky? And I was. It was an experience that, how would you like to be shot at all night and then get up to see that the guy's a true marksman? Huh?
The longest night of your life, I'm sure.
Well, it was. It was a long night, but there was no moon, nothing to light up the sky or the ground. It was just black.
So tell us about your best day.
My best day? Can I give you a funny
Sure.
best day? Okay. We had a base in Hawaii, a little town called Iwa, Hawaii, that the Marine Corps Air Force had this contingency in. So when we came back from Saipan, we came back to that particular base. Well, we'd been there maybe 24, 48 hours, I don't know. And we all needed a shower. So the, excuse me, the shower barn was a sidewalk, a curbstone, a street, blah, 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 over to the rest area barn on the other block. So we all went over, showered. There wasn't anybody else on the base but us. So we didn't care whether we had clothes on or not. Oh boy. So anyhow, we went over and we all showered and come back, and we were about a third of the way back to our barracks when up come this MP, Marine Corps MP, on a motorcycle. Go back! Go back! And we thought, go back? What the hell are we going back for? We're all clean. Go back! Go back! So about that time, another motorcyclist come up. These are all MPs now, Marine Corps MPs. And he's saying, go back! They're coming! They're coming! We said, who's coming? He said, the women are coming! The women are coming!
That'll strike the fear in your heart.
So, anyhow, the Lady Marines were coming to Hawaii for the first time for a Lady Marine to be on a base like that. So we just kept walking. The heck with he's joking. We're not going to send Lady Marines over here to this group. It's crazy. Well, we kept on walking, and so did everything else. If you know. So we got to the street, and another guy on a motorcycle came. He said, the bus is back here coming. The bus is coming. So we said, well, hit that for right for the bus. So by golly, that bus went by us. Every darn window in that bus was rolled down with a woman's head sticking out. Every doggone one.
I hope they were all nurses.
Well, there was a good many of them
Oh,
that
okay.
were nurses, yeah. A lot of them were typists. But anyhow, we all started laughing, and we could hardly make it back to the barracks. And when we did, we got fully dressed, and everything went real well. And we decided that since the girls saw all of us, we should try and see as much of them as possible. Now, this is life in the Marine Corps, isn't that hell? So anyhow, we said, okay, how can we do it? And he says, well, why don't we set up a watch? There's a little campground down here that we try to use. Why don't we set up a little watch and take over this 18 tent unit campground? There's a wooden shanty there. We can have 2 men go down, make sure that the tents don't blow away. Oh, that's not a bad idea. So we did, and finally we got to saying, hey, I tell you what, we got 18 tents. The women have barracks they're sleeping in, yeah. Let's see if we can't get the women here for a beer party and a picnic. Well, it was so easy. I'm telling you. The first one we asked, yes, I'll be glad to help you out. You know. So we had a beer party down there. And that whole thing about us being nude, I think it was spread all the way back to Dago. But anyhow.
You're telling me they weren't playing hard to get.
Oh, I don't know about that. But anyhow, it was a fun thing. We all enjoyed the picnic, and it was great.
That sounds like a good day to me. So, where were you when the war ended?
Saipan.
Saipan. And how long before you were sent home after the war?
Well, I took from Saipan to Hawaii and San Diego. I was en route home all the way from Hawaii, the truth be it known, and I left from Hawaii to Los Angeles to get off the plane at Los Angeles and then take a train from Los Angeles back to Indianapolis.
So it sounds like you took ships, multiple ships, and then ended up on a train. And
Yeah.
who was here to welcome you home when you got off the train?
Well, Mom and Dad.
Mom and Dad. Thank you very much, Gene. I appreciate it. Leon, I'm sorry I don't have a lot of video for you, but I'm going to ask you the same questions that I asked the rest of them. Leon was in the United States Marine Corps, Marine Transport Squadron 152, part of Marine Air Group 25, which I understand was a medical evacuation unit. Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Where were you? Were you drafted or did you volunteer?
Volunteered.
Volunteered. And how old were you?
Gosh, I
Wasn't even out of high school.
No, that's it.
It says on your sheet 17 years old. I'm going to cheat and I'm going to read some of that. So keep this up here.
Oh,
What were you doing? Well, I know what you were doing when you went into the Marine Corps. You were still going to high school, right?
yes.
Where did you train when you first got in the Marine Corps, and how long did that take?
Boy, I mean, it took, I have a hard time talking.
Okay.
But anyhow, it was the, I would say that I could,
Boot camp in San Diego, basically.
that's right, yeah.
Okay, so you went through boot camp in San Diego, and your military occupational specialty, and I'm using Army language. I know you Marines don't talk the same language, but you were in some kind of a medical unit. What was your job?
It was, geez, I mean, there was no limit to what I had done.
Okay.
Yeah, but this is, that's when I was in, now, what,
You fueled airplanes, Dad, right?
Fueling aircraft, basically.
yeah, I was in, I
Fueled airplanes.
You were the person responsible for fueling the aircraft
Yeah.
that was transporting the wounded
yes,
from combat operations back to the United States or wherever they were being treated. Is that right?
yes, sir. I mean, but then that is true, that, I get lost.
That's okay. Were you an individual replacement, or did you go with an entire unit when you went overseas?
No, one person.
Individual,
Me, yeah.
individual replacement?
Yes.
Okay. Did you stay with the same unit for your entire tour?
No, my gosh, it's so, I can't really, I can't.
You served with a number of different units, though.
Yeah, well, yes, I mean,
Okay.
yep,
So, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of Marine Air Group 25, which is the unit you were assigned
Yes.
to, 152nd Squadron or something like that.
Yeah.
There were a couple other interesting individuals that were assigned to the same unit as you. One of them was George Roy Hill. And those of you who are not familiar with the name George Roy Hill,
no,
he was the director of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. And there's another movie with, you know, those two actors in it. I can't think of it, the name of it right now. That's how bad it is. But
Yeah.
the director of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, do you know who the other famous member of your unit was? I'll give you a hint. He was Vice President of the United States, and then he became the President of the United States.
Did he really?
We're talking about Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon was a member of the same group as you were. Did you ever meet Richard Nixon?
No, I didn't.
I'm going to fill you in on a little more that I found out on background of Leon Gunya and his unit, the Marine Air Group. They started out at Guadalcanal
Yes.
and also went on to Bougainville,
Yep.
the Philippines,
Yes.
the landings in Okinawa. Okinawa ring a bell?
Geez, not Okinawa, not the old Okinawa.
Not so much. When were you discharged? Was the war over when you were discharged?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And how about your welcome home to the States? Would they have big parade for you and everything?
Oh, no. No.
Read what we wrote.
When you got off the train, who greeted you?
You know, by God, I can't even tell you that.
We're not talking about large numbers of people, though.
No, I mean, I was one person in the I don't know, I mean,
I think he just walked back home with his sea bag.
Yep,
that's right.
yep.
That's exactly it.
Did you live in Minneapolis at the time?
Well, yes.
Okay.
No. Wisconsin.
Or it wasn't, no,
Wisconsin.
Little
Thor.
town.
Thorpe,
Oh,
Wisconsin.
Okay.
Okay.
It says on his notes, Mom and Dad were happy to have him home. He walked off the train and walked home to the family farm, carrying his sea bag on his back. Thank you, Leon. Appreciate it very much.
All right, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
The Post had these made up, and they're quite attractive. The first gentleman I want to ask to come up is Tech Sergeant Don Halverson, a life member of Crystal Post VFW 494, member of the 34th Infantry Red Bulls Division, 168th Infantry Regiment, fought in the Naples Foggia campaigns, the Rome Arno campaign, the North Apennines, and the Po Valley. Don, why don't you stand out here in front of we're going to get a picture of everybody at the end. He served from 9 September 1943 until the end of the war in Europe on 8 May 1945. Hold that in front of you, Don, and we're going to get some other gentlemen up here. Tech Sergeant Lee D. Mills. Come on up.
He can't.
Okay. Can a family member come up and get his plaque, please? Is there a family member that could come and get his plaque? Lee Mills is a life member of Crystal VFW 494. He was in the 6th Armored Division, which was the Spearhead Division, I believe, for General Patton in World War II. He was with the 69th Tank Battalion. He fought in the campaigns in Normandy, northern France, the Rhineland, the Ardennes, which is the Battle of the Bulge, for those of you not militarily inclined, and in Central Europe. And he served from 6 June 1944 until the end of the war on 8 May 1945. Tech Sergeant Lee Mills. Pharmacist mate 2nd class Ken Larson, I guess he already left. that correct?
You're gonna get a picture.
Staff Sergeant Gene Roberts, another life member, 3rd Marine Division, Air Wing,
Pretty good, don't you?
fought in the Pacific Theater, the Battle of Saipan from April 1943 to September 2nd, 1945. Now, when we put this dinner together, we didn't have the information from all of the World War II veterans that are life members of this post. We will be gathering that information. So those of you who are present, I hope you'll stick around afterwards so we can get the information and have plaques made for you as well. But I'm going to ask the rest of the World War II veterans from this post to come forward and stand with these gentlemen. And I'm going to present, as the commander of Crystal VFW 494, I'm going to present a challenge coin to each of these World War II veterans. And for you World War II veterans, this is important, so listen up. If you come to the post with this challenge coin and you slap it on the bottom, and the person next to you doesn't have a challenge coin, they have to buy you a drink. This challenge started long after I left Vietnam, I'll tell you, otherwise I'd have been drinking for free for a long time. But I'm going to present those now.
There's one more.
One more for you.
There's one more coming up, Don.
We'll wait.
Marianne, there's one more.
Keep coming. Thank you. You're welcome. Welcome home. I'm going to have mine in my pocket every day, I see. Thank you. Welcome home. Thank you. Welcome home. Welcome home. Did I miss anybody?
Identify their names, John.
Well, they're going to have to speak up because I don't know everybody's name, starting with Leon. George Brosey.
Gene Roberts.
John Helgerson?
Leon Gunya.
Yes. You tell him.
Lee Mills. Your name, sir?
Joe Dovey.
Get in the back row here.
Yeah.
People standing, get in the back row. Come on, guys, get in the back row here. Right.
Yeah, so I can get you all in a good picture for our newsletter.
John, can you repeat those last two names? We couldn't hear it out here.
I'm sorry, I don't memorize names that quickly, but we'll get them all listed for the newsletter. When you get their picture, the names will be correct in the newsletter. Look at
Hey,
the camera, guys.
all eyes over here, guys. Some smiles. I look tough. Thank you.
Can you get a standing ovation from everybody? Welcome home, guys.